Hey guys, this is Kris, Devin, and Brian with the UA Lab. Today we wanted to go over not so much cards themselves, but going over some important stuff for the game, and in this case, specifically preparing for an event. So we've got a few topics that we want to discuss. We've got them laid out here. We just want to kind of go over each of these and just kind of give our thoughts and just kind of jump right into it. Um, so First, we have for preparing for a tournament, are you ready for a competitive event? First thing with that is, do you know the rules? This can spread from anywhere from just knowing the basic rules, knowing how to play the game, to even knowing card rulings.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was going to say part of this, like, do you know the rules? Obviously, you need to know how to play the game. You need to know, you start with 7 cards, put your 7 life, all that. But it's interactions and the weird little things in the meta game. You need to know, like, you have the Gaius and Willy trigger, or the Gaius Wonder trigger, and things like that.
yeah, absolutely. Knowing how different cards interact with each other, um, different little combos you have access to, and being aware of not just your own interactions, but also the interactions of the meta that you're expecting. So you're not caught off guard. Nobody likes having that gotcha moment where you just don't understand how something works.
Yeah, and this
Yeah.
really is. Sorry, Devin, go ahead.
I was just gonna say another thing you should know the rules on is tournament rules, right?
Oh,
Yeah,
You should
absolutely.
know that like when you shuffle, you have to present your deck to your opponent, and they are allowed to shuffle your deck. You
absolutely.
can't get mad at that. That is part of the rules. There's a lot of etiquette at tournaments you should be familiar with, and just make sure you know the rules of the event you're going to, and not just the game rules.
Well, yeah, I mean, the kind of event, it makes it different too. Like,
Absolutely.
locals is different than nationals, is different than worlds and stuff like
Oh
that.
yeah, yeah. A locals event, you might be fine having proxy cards. Your locals might just say, "Hey, yeah, you don't have the cards yet. Totally fine. We're cool with that." But you move beyond that, and that's where people might start saying, "Well, hey, you have to have that. You can't
They
go to
yeah,
a
they
regional with a
will say
proxy."
that you can't have a
Yeah.
read.
Yeah.
You might
Even
be
a
able to get
rare
by on.
battle, you're probably not going to be
Yeah,
allowed to do that because other people are like, hey, this prizing is actually worth something. I don't want you to use a proxy deck
yeah,
against
Yeah,
me,
I would
right? Like,
say anything with pricing on the line, a proxy is no longer appropriate.
exactly.
exactly.
Yeah. So again, just a very blatant or overarching know the rules, and this extends to kind of every aspect of the game. And a lot of this kind of stuff also spreads to other games, not just Union Arena. Uh,
Yeah, tournament structure is pretty universal.
yeah.
For the most part. Yep.
Uh-huh. I think another thing is for for you Union Arena. A lot of the times we're playing best of one, but a lot of other Bandai games are moving towards where the top cut moves into best of three. Some even with a side deck, like Gundam is adding in a side deck. So that's one of those things where you should be aware of that going forward, like going into an event to
Yeah.
say, hey, is this event likely going to cut to top cut? Uh, if it does, is it going to be best of one still, or is it going to be best of three? Do I need to prepare a side deck? Anybody that doesn't know what a side deck is, it is an extra amount of cards that you have that you don't play in your deck that between games of the single match, so against your one opponent, you're able to slide those cards in while taking other cards out, depending on the rules of the game.
Yeah,
Um,
each game has different rulings about
exactly.
siding. We won't get into the weeds since UA doesn't currently have it, but
Exactly.
every game is a little bit different. Even Magic recently has changed their rules on siding about not having to have your side deck be the same, your main deck be the same size before and after siding.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
So, so there's a bunch of stuff which is it's important to know all the rules that you can. Of course, you can't know everything. There's going to be those points where you just yeah you have to find out. But if ever you're unsure about something, ask a judge. Uh, Next, do you have the time to prepare for the event? Um, this is, this is pertinent. Like, do you have enough time to actually sit down and prepare for the event you're going to? And the amount of time that you need really does vary based off the type of event you're going to.
Exactly. And like along with that, like you say for locals, the only thing you need to have ready is a deck that is legal, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
That's all that you need. A rare battle, you need to make sure it's a little bit more, right? You have to make sure you're the right IP and etc. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Regionals, not only do you need to have your deck ready, but there's other things to be focused on to get ready for the event,
Mm-hmm.
right? You because a regional, if you're entering a regional, I assume you want to compete at a competitive level. So you need to be saying, is your deck actually worth it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. How does your deck sit in it? And then, oh man, I just totally had something on the top of my head. Uh, but yeah, the idea is, do you actually have the time to sit down and play through the event, or prepare for the event, and then even to an extension, do you have enough time to actually do the event? Regionals can get anywhere from, depending on the size of the regional, it can go from, I'd say, anywhere from 6 to 10 rounds. Six if you've got a fairly small regional, but like the upcoming LCQ before Nats, I expect that to be 8 to 10 rounds.
Yeah, I think it's very reasonable to be 8 to 10 rounds. And part of preparing for an event that people forget about is its travel time.
Mm-hmm.
Or am I going out of state for an event? Do I need to take time off from work? What about my testing beforehand? Because that's something that I think a lot of people don't, and we'll get to talk about it later in the video, but something that people don't really think about is what do I have to dedicate just to testing?
Yeah. An example of
Mm-hmm.
that is as we've been preparing for the LCQ and the Nats, or the national tournament, we've been testing for about 3 months straight right now.
Nearly, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So think about the time commitment to prepare and do the event. And part of that is, what level is the event? Rare battles are generally not super crazy, but they are starting to get a little bit more competitive. I believe, Brian, you said they're cutting down to where you can only have 8 participants in a rare battle.
Yeah, so in upcoming rare battles, I believe it's after April, um, that they're eight. Well, rare battles will be changing that only Bandai Plus stores that are gold rank or silver rank can host them. And then depending on your status, depends on how many events you can hold. I believe a silver store can host 2 events that are 8 man each. And I think gold stores can hold maybe 3 or 4. That one I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah.
I know that our local store we play at is a silver rank store, so they will be having 2 silver events for the rare battles coming forward,
Yeah.
going forward.
Um, yeah. So with the idea of, do you have time to prepare, you're going to need a little less time to prepare for a rare battle because it's condensed down, right? It's only going to be a single set that you can play. So in this case, upcoming rare battles we have at this current time of us recording is, we've got Nikkei, we've got Evangelion, we've got
This rotation is Nikkei and Demon Slayer.
Nikkei and Demon Slayer. Okay, hey, there you go. So
There it
those are
is,
ones
yeah.
where it's like, hey, okay, what is the, which one are you going to? All right, you really don't need as much time to prepare because it's not as big of an event. But when it comes to regionals and nationals, and if you do well at nationals, even going to worlds, like, you do need to have the time to put into it overall.
Especially an aside that we'll get into more later is we're making the assumption that if you're going to regionals and nationals, you want to do well, right? Now, if you want to just casually enter with your pet deck and just see if it goes well, that's fine too, right? And then at that point, you don't need to prepare as much. But we're
Yeah,
kind
the
of going in with the
expectations are different.
mindset exactly
Yeah,
that, like, if you're going to regionals, it's probably because you care enough that you want to do well.
exactly. So with that, it leads into, you already know what event you're going to. How do you choose your deck? What deck do you take to something beyond just a local event? Something to look at is cost. UA is a in an interesting position where
Yeah, it's very unique.
the cost of a deck of a competitive tier 1 deck in UA doesn't really exceed $150. You can see that here with Red Kenshin. So that is as of recording, that is I pieced out a deck of Red Kenshin, and this is the base rarity for both of these decks you see here. $150 for a competitive tier 1 capable deck, as compared to, say, I think you said Magic right now, standard is upwards in thousands for some decks.
It's expensive. Well, no, I would say
Oh,
thousands, but
thousands.
it's
Yeah.
it's 1,000.
Yeah,
I mean, a good
a
example.
couple break 1,000.
Yeah, good example. I'm going to the YCS in Virginia this weekend, and the Forbidden Crown, which is a new card that just came out, is $60 a piece to $70 a piece. So if I play 3 of them, that is $210 for 3 cards.
Yep. 3 cards break the entire price limit of Red
Yeah.
Kenshin.
Yeah, 3 Yu-Gi-Oh cards break over Kenshin, and not just barely, by a lot.
Yeah. And I'd even say Red Kenshin is probably one of the more expensive decks. Again, I don't think many
Correct.
Yeah.
It is one of the more expensive, yeah.
Yeah. As compared to a deck like Song. And we'll go over why these two are the ones we've chosen here to represent. But Song is a deck that is, like, power-wise, potentially in that tier 1 area, but it costs a fraction. It costs a third of Red Kenshin. So it's like you can easily build a deck for a pretty reasonable price. And on top of that, it's like it's usually only like 2 to 3 cards in any given deck that have that price, like a higher price point. So you can usually make it work pretty well if you've got a deck that's a little bit more reasonable to work with.
Yeah, and we obviously don't want to be sounding like we're made of money and things like that. We understand that decks have costs associated with them, and
Yes.
you need to be good stewards of your money, and you need to be careful and conscious of what you buy. But UA is a nice game where I can go get a whole deck generally for under $100.
I think you could actually unironically build Saitama, yellow Saitama, for around $20 to $30.
Yeah. And that used to be tier 1, and even at its peak, it was not that expensive.
Exactly. And that's where it's like, to what Brian was saying, like, it's still a cost. You're still having to invest in the game. And ideally, you're investing in sets and in decks that are either a play style that you just adore, or into a deck that is an IP that you love. We have Kagurabachi coming up, and I know multiple people at our locals that are super excited for it, whether it's because they like the idea of what the decks do, or if they just absolutely love the series. But it's a series that we know is going to sell well because so many people are interested in it. But that I think that should come into, like, hey, don't get discouraged on the type of deck or the cost of the deck, but understand that if your idea is, hey, I'm going to a high level event, I'm wanting to go to nationals, I want to go to worlds, you do need to keep in mind that ideally you're playing what is considered the best deck or best decks, and you're going to be picking up a deck. If not one of those, you're going to be playing something that is good into those decks, and that's where you're going to have to put a cost down. And so there is, unfortunately, always that slight barrier to entry of, do you have the money to play the deck you want to play? But Union Arena, comparatively, compared to a lot of other card games, is very much more affordable than some other games out there. Yeah,
I totally agree.
Next, something to keep in mind is how many rounds are in the event.
Go ahead. I can say this is something that doesn't get talked about a ton, but mental fatigue is a real thing in any competitive card game that you play. I've been playing them for over 20 years, and I can tell you that I have a much different mental thought processing ability at a 4-round event as opposed to a 12-round event.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that can affect what deck you take, right? Because,
Absolutely.
like, let's look at the 2 on screen, right?
Yep.
Kenshin, one of the easiest decks possibly in the format. You can just like, if it's a long round event, you're still probably not going to mentally burn out. Song requires a lot of thoughts and lots of actions. You could burn out after just 5 or 6 rounds and kind of start to make big mistakes later on.
Yeah. And that's not to say that there aren't decisions and things you have to make with something like Red Kenshin,
Oh,
but
absolutely.
its general gameplay is going to be a lot smoother, a lot easier, where you're not having to contemplate, oh, hey, I circled this card and it's now on the bottom, so now I think I need to think about how long it's going to be till I get it, or, the kind of thing that you do when you're playing Song. Um, the I think another two decks that are a great example here of like an easier deck to play mentally versus a more difficult deck to play mentally would be something like Spear of Gaius with Evangelion, and something like the Yellow Mina from Kaiju number 8, where Gaius is a little bit more like Kenshin, bit easier to play. So you're not having you do have those decisions, but you're not having this like mental, like
Yeah.
you're not having to do mental gymnastics in your head to figure out how to get rid of a body on board. Whereas Mina, you do sometimes have to actually be like, okay, how do I deal with this? How do I go for lethal? How do I set this up in just the right way that I can win?
And we want to be sure we're being clear here that every deck has a lot of skill expression if you want to play it at a very, very high level. We're not
Absolutely.
saying that decks are just absolutely easy. They run themselves in their sleep, and things like that. We're still saying that you have to understand what your deck's trying to do. You still have to understand the rules of the game. You still need to know the meta. And so there still is player skill expression in all decks in Union
Absolutely.
Arena.
For sure. Every deck has its own uniqueness, and while a deck may be, objectively an easier deck to play, so again, in this case, Kenshin versus Song, that doesn't mean that Kenshin is just a walk in the park. Like, it still requires thought. You still have to know how to deal with things.
When do I
But
push back? When do I not push back? When do I
yeah,
make it so my Kenshins can kill versus not kill? And
yeah, exactly. When do I go for the double attacker raid versus the push raid? Right? So there are still thoughts there, but on average, the choice and the mental fatigue that you have playing a deck like Kenshin compared to a deck like Song, or I'd even argue Mustang, it's going to be a lot easier on you playing a deck like Kenshin for the mental fortitude side of things. Um, Next, what does the meta look like? It's very important that as you choose your deck, you need to figure out like what are you going to expect. To use our current example for the upcoming 2026 Bandai Card Fest in Vegas, what we're looking at is you're going to see Kenshin, you're going to see Spear of Gaius, you're going to see Yellow Ava, you're going to see Purple Kenshin, Mina,
GGO.
GGO.
Yeah.
You'll probably see your
Yep.
Mustangs. You'll probably see a Lancelot. It's important to have an idea of what to expect from the meta, because you need to know how your deck deals with meta. Nobody is telling you that you need to play a meta deck, but you should know how your deck deals with the meta decks in order to have a better chance at winning the event.
Yeah, I think if we even go back and let's take it back to a little bit more of a simple
Yeah.
thought. When you look at a meta, when you're checking it out, is this a control meta? Is this
Yes.
a aggro meta? Is this
Hmm.
something that is more of a mid-range? And these are different styles of decks that are popular and winning events. That is what we're talking about. So if you want to play something like, we'll use Toto for example, I would play Toto into a meta that is maybe not as aggressive and that the energy line is very important and they don't want me screwing around with it. That is a perfect meta to mess with a deck like Toto,
Yep,
as
exactly.
opposed to a meta that is straight Kenshin, because it is just straight fast and they don't care what's on their energy line half the time.
Yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely.
Obviously, they want their Cowroos and things like that, but
Yeah,
those are two examples of different metas where a deck is either a good choice or a bad choice.
right, exactly. And that's like it's easy to look at a deck and say, "Hey, I really enjoy this deck," but it's not doing great into the meta, and you might have to you have to make that choice of what am I looking to do, right?
Yeah, and we're not talking power creep here. We're talking
Yeah,
about, a meta choice and a meta call.
exactly.
Yeah, it's like what matchups you expect to face at a tournament.
Yeah,
Correct, yeah.
exactly. Right. So again, to use the current example, I expect we're going to see a lot of Gaius. I expect we're going to see a lot of Kenshin, and we're probably going to see a lot of Yellow Ava as well. Um,
Yeah, I think you're going to see a ton of Yellow Ava.
I
I've seen so much hype for that deck.
it's
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 crazy.
it's a fun deck, so I do not blame people for being excited about it. So then
Oh
you have
yeah, yeah, yeah. I would agree. It's
yeah.
it's a good deck.
So that's where you say, okay, here's the deck I'm interested in taking. Regardless of what the deck actually is, how does that deck do into, in this case, we'll just say the three decks. How does it do into Red Kenshin, into Spear of Gaius, into the Yellow Ava Heroines deck? If you're struggling against two out of those three, maybe not the best call. But
Yeah,
if
probably a
you're
bad meta call.
but if you're doing well into two of those three, it might be the right choice, especially if it's a deck you enjoy. But it does matter on how your deck does play into a meta, into an overarching meta, and into a specific style, like the specific meta decks, to however much you want to actually test that.
Yeah, and I'd say kind of a counterpoint to what you're saying here is if you are playing something that's a little bit off meta, it is nice because sometimes people don't test into everything.
Oh yeah,
So if I'm playing Yellow Bambi and nobody knows what that deck does, I can sneak a win or two just because it's an off meta choice.
oh
And
yeah,
so, like I said, I think
Exactly.
we've talked about this one a ton, and I think we're probably pretty good. But that is definitely part of it is knowing if your deck is good into the current meta, and if people even know what your deck does.
exactly.
Exactly.
Moving on, we kind of touched on this for a second, but it's what do you want from the event? Are you wanting to win? Are you wanting to have fun? Or you want to push a pet deck? So in this case, to use myself as an example, I would like to go to the LCQ and the national event. I want to win. I want to win the LCQ or whatever I need to do to get accepted into the national event, and I want to win the national event. That is my goal into this upcoming tournament. But some people may say, hey, you know what? I like doing competitive stuff, but I also just want to have fun. Like if I'm not having fun, if I don't enjoy playing one of the top tier meta decks, then find a deck you do enjoy. Find a deck that you think does well and have fun with it. Alternatively, you can take a pet deck. You may have a deck that you say, we'll take Bambi's for example. You have Bambi's, you absolutely love that deck, and you don't care that it's not a great pick. You just want to see how far you can actually take that deck. That's fine. That's what you're trying to aim to get out of a particular event, and that can help you absolutely determine what you want to play.
Well, and yeah, just kind of building
Mhm.
up what you're saying is what am I wanting from the event? It's kind of all going back to you need to have a very clear expectation of what you're trying to get out of anything you do in any card game, whether it's Union Arena, Gundam, Digimon, Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh, Life. Like you need to know what you want so you can
Exactly.
plan and do things accordingly.
Yeah.
For sure. Um, so with that, because that part's that's simple enough. What do you want from it? So then we touch on this a little bit, which is how hard is the deck to play. So to touch on that first, we want to talk about deck floor. Uh, Deck floor is effectively how good a deck is at its like with a fresh brand new pilot, somebody that's never played the deck before.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, because you're gonna have a deck, and we have examples up here. So Kenshin is a great example. It is a very good deck. It has got some linear play lines, and you're really trying to be aggressive. It's very easy to tell somebody, "Hey, this is an aggressive deck. Just keep, your Cowroos on the back line, and make sure you have 4 energy. And as long as you got 4 energy, you're good to jam and go."
Mm-hmm.
That's about all you really have to tell somebody to give them some kind of an idea how to play that, as opposed to Yuna, where you're having to tell them, well, you need to make sure you play a song every turn because every card in the deck is based off from songs, and your Kirito can't kill, your Asuna doesn't have impact. And the unit you have pictured here can't pump. So
Hmm.
it is very different when you're talking about that. So yeah, the deck
Yeah,
floor, the ability for a deck to perform with a new pilot is important to consider, especially if you're picking a deck that you're not familiar with.
exactly. I do want to
Hmm.
specify deck floor is different from skill floor. I know that's a term that's often thrown around as well, where what we're saying is deck floor is how good the deck is at its base state versus skill floor being more of like how easy is it to learn how to play the deck at an okay level. So in
Yeah.
this case, Kenshin has a lower skill floor because it is an objectively easier deck to just pick up and play versus uh, Song, Ordinal Scale, Yuna, uh, where it's a deck that has a much higher skill floor because you need to understand entirely how the deck works before you can even play it to a competent level. Then, with all of that comes skill ceiling. This is how hard the deck is to play at a good level, at a competitive level. So again, using these two as example, Kenshin has a lower skill ceiling. It is just overall a much easier deck to pick up, easier deck to pilot, and easier deck to do really well with. Yuna is a much harder deck to pick up, a much harder deck to pilot at a high level, um, and you're going to struggle more just jumping into Yuna than into Kenshin. So if you had a brand new player that's never played UA before, and they say, hey, what deck should I pick up? I would suggest a deck like Kenshin. If we're talking like no cost included here, we're just saying, hey, play this deck. Kenshin's going to be a lot easier for someone to pick up and understand how to play it.
Yeah, and I think even like um, the
Kenpachi
Kenpachi,
Hitsugaya.
I can't remember. He hits a guy. Thank you, goodness gracious. I was gonna say Todoroki, and that is not the right anime. I'm
Close
sorry,
enough.
And
Close
everyone.
enough.
Yeah, so yeah, like the Hitsugaya and Kenpachi deck is kind of an anti-meta deck. It's kind of similar to a Mina style,
Yeah.
and so it is very much a thought-intensive deck. Obviously you're jamming your Kenpachis and things like that, but you got to know when you're going to freeze and what are you going to
Mm-hmm.
freeze and things like that. So
Mhm.
definitely has a lot to do with
Like
it.
I think that's a great example of a deck that has I'd say actually a lower skill floor, in the sense of like it's easier to just pick up because at its very base core, it is just kind of flood the board with big scary Kenpachis and freeze stuff with Hitsugaya. But to do really well with the deck, its skill ceiling is much higher because you need to know your opponent. You need to know how like what to hit on their board and when to be aggressive and pull back and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, and I think
Exactly.
another good example is like purple purple bleach. So
Mm-hmm.
if you're playing a Rukia Ichigo build, that deck just has a ton of removal. You're milling a bunch of cards. You're able to activate the effects. It's not very difficult to pilot, but it does have a high skill ceiling because you have to again know what am I wanting to remove, and sometimes you get lucky, but it's kind of in that same vein.
Yeah, what to discard, when to discard, do I have enough in my discard to use my ability, stuff like that, right?
Yeah, resource management kind of stuff. Yep.
Exactly. Uh, Last thing is difficulty to master. So this goes beyond just skill ceiling. Skill ceiling is more of like
Very different.
how hard it is to become competent with the deck, I'd say. Whereas difficulty to master is more of like, hey, you are just the best with this deck. You know everything about it. You are just so comfortable with it that you can basically play it in your sleep. It's kind of how I would see it. I don't know if you guys would agree with that exactly.
I kind of a little bit different on for me. Like I would think like if I'm going to have mastery of a deck, I would think that I'm within the top 10% of players' skill
Yeah.
for a deck is kind of what I would say as I look at that. I don't know what you think, Devin, but that's where I would be like, hey, I'm a top 10 percenter with a specific deck, as far as my playability on it. Maybe not my results.
Yeah, and there's also like how difficult it is on a. I'm trying to get my thoughts out here of like not just a like to do well in one game because sometimes you kind of see a line and you're just like, I get this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I know what to do in this scenario, but it's like how well you would do in any matchup, right? You could just take that deck against any deck and just do amazing with it, right? You just know, I know the matchup into this deck and I know exactly when to use this card and this card and this card, right? You're just like really on top of all the little details.
Yeah. So, and I like somebody that's a master of a deck is generally going to just be able to play the deck in a way that's almost beyond what you would expect from it. Like
Well,
some,
that's exactly what I was going to say. That's a great example.
yeah, because like you look at Kenshin, and on the surface, it is very much unga bunga. I swing face. I'm just gonna throw everything at you. But there is a lot of nuance that can be found there that somebody that has actually mastered the deck is going to be able to exploit much better than somebody who has not.
Yeah, and something to explain to people is it takes a lot to get to that true mastery of a deck.
Mm-hmm.
People try to work towards it. Don't get discouraged if you don't get to that right away. It can take a long time, especially if you're looking at some of the best players in the world and you watch some of their gameplay, some of the things and options they pick, or how they're resourcing cards or doing management is not something you'll see from a typical player. So the gameplay can look totally different because they're just playing at a different level. So
Yeah.
understand that mastery takes a long time to learn in anything. So don't expect it to be something that happens quickly. We want to make sure that we're not telling you, hey, you can become a master of any deck in 30 days by subscribing to our YouTube channel and jumping into Discord,
No, that's
nothing like
exactly what
that.
we're selling you.
I'm sorry, yeah, right. Dang it, I did it wrong.
It'll be
But
three
anyway,
payments of $99.99.
all right.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a big one for me. Is mastery is something you work towards.
exactly. I will also argue that with UA, it might be a little bit different. We'll see as the game develops, especially here on the English side of things. But in other games, there's always that potential for future support to come in. And I know we're starting to get set threes for like Bleach and whatnot. So there's always that like, hey, I have day one been playing this deck. It's never been a great deck. Or hey, it was good and maybe fell out of favor. And I'm just waiting for its moment to shine again. Somebody that has that mastery of the deck will be able to take that and be like, okay, I've got what I need. I can now become that guy with the deck.
Yeah.
So, moving on. You've decided what deck you're going to take. How do you test for the event you're trying to go to?
I have a lot of thoughts about this.
This is a section that has a lot of information we can go over. And so the first thing first is what defines something as testing. So Brian, what would you say you would define testing as?
So for me, testing, I mean, we have kind of goldfishing up here, but for myself, when I'm testing a deck, I'm looking at a couple different things. So I'm looking at how do I do into certain matchups? How do I run my play lines uninterrupted? How do I run my play lines interrupted? And then also, I'm looking at what is my turn to kill on average.
Mm-hmm.
Those are what I typically am looking at when I am testing in Union Arena. Other games, I have other stuff I look at. Can get into that in another video at another time if people want to.
Yeah.
But typically for testing, I'm trying to figure out into the meta I'm looking at, what am I doing against a certain deck? And goldfishing is probably something that most people know. You might know it under a different name. But goldfishing would be if my opponent was a goldfish and did nothing, what actions would I take? So this is like your solitaire, play by yourself where you're playing out your hand to kind of see how your deck plays and runs is what goldfishing would be.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a thing to add to this is it's usually one of the early stages of testing your deck is just to get a feel for the deck.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
and
learn
see how
it
the like
flows.
curve works and what actions can you be, because sometimes you even see like a combo that you're like, oh, I can do this and then this now because I minus BP there, now my other card now gets an extra effect or something like that.
Yeah,
Right?
and I would say goldfishing is where you learn what are good hands and what are bad hands. So if you
Yes.
don't goldfish, you will never learn what are good and bad hands until you're playing against people in events or you're in your actual testing, and then you can get tilted because you're like, my hands suck, I can never do good. It's like, well, you shouldn't have kept that hand.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. And I'll say to go beyond gold fishing, I think testing can incorporate a lot of different things. It's not always just playing the game. It's like how much you're like researching, how much you are trying to learn about different things, and just kind of really having it on your mind to think about ways you can either improve as a player or improve with a deck.
Yeah, I think that there's a certain element of, hey, I'm struggling with, well, make a GGO.
Mm-hmm.
You're a GGO player. Walk
Yes.
me through, what do I need to do to get better at this? What do you struggle? Like, there's a lot of like where I might not be physically play testing my deck,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm talking with somebody that does play it or is better at it than I am to kind of find out what they're doing. That, it might sound counterintuitive that I'm not playing my deck to be testing, but there is information gathering that is important, that is a part of testing, because
Exactly.
you're just trying to gather information and experience that's why you test.
Precisely. So part of testing is you need to have structure to your testing. This kind of ties into what we were saying before. This is something that I'll be the first to say I'm not exactly the best at. It's
We've
easy.
been good and we've been really bad
Yeah.
about this part of it.
It's
Well, at least part of
Yeah.
these.
yeah. It's
Yeah. Some of these we've been good about, some we've been bad.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's really easy to play your games and be like either excited because you just won, or maybe you're like, oh man, you just got me there, and I just need to get my I get my run back, and so you just jump into the next game and you don't actually sit and process. And so that's where stuff like recording your game results. So saying, hey, I'm playing this deck. So I'm playing GGO. How am I doing against Kenshin? How am I doing against Gaius? How am I doing against XYZ deck, right? So figuring out maybe you've got a really good win rate against one deck, but a really poor win rate against another. Recording your game results is going to give you that information so you can actually quantify what you're feeling going into those matchups.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and along with that, also it's important because sometimes I've heard it described as the time spent playing a game matters. If you're a slower deck, that when it takes a long time to win, it can feel really good when you're like, I held out and then I got
Oh,
this like comeback win. And something like some of these control decks, that's what they do every time. And so it can feel better than it actually is. And vice versa, an aggro deck like Tension, if it like has a great start, gets them down to 2 life, but then sputters out, that game, and then you end up losing, you might find like, oh man, I don't know if this deck's that great. I was just losing for forever, and then you look back at the results and you're still like 4-2, but those 2 losses took as much time as the 4 wins together,
mm-hmm.
right? That is something you have to keep in mind, and so having a kind of objective thing that you wrote down can type keep track of that better.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and I think something that we should talk about a little bit more in depth is like things that we recommend recording are who went first in the match, who won, how many specials were in life. Kris and I were testing today, and one of the games we played, first attack he did into me, he hit a special in life with a Kenshin raid. Feels great for me, and it helps snowball the game. But that's stuff you would record, and obviously we know this is a trigger game. You're gonna have that, but it is good to record something like, "Hey, I drew 3 finals," or I had 3 no triggers in life." Those are some things that you can, especially if your deck doesn't play a lot of no triggers, stuff like that. That's stuff you want to record. Who's going first is really important. If you had a mulligan, that's another thing I like to record.
I think we for a little bit we were even recording what we opened with our hand to say like, hey, what am I? The idea being to like see here's what cards I typically am getting winning with when I see them in my opening hand.
Yeah, we have to get back to using
Yeah,
that our
yeah,
program. It was really
Yeah.
good. So like I
yeah.
said, we'll share it with everybody a little bit
We
later,
got
but
lazy.
yeah. But one thing I think we've been really good about is discussing our matches, at least among the three of us. We have more
Yeah,
people in our playtest group. We have an awesome playtest group. Shout out to everybody that playtests with us. You guys are awesome. It makes it fun to play this game. So,
appreciate you guys.
Yes, appreciate you.
Yeah,
but
we
go ahead.
go
Sorry,
ahead.
Kris.
I was just say, yeah, we do spend a lot of time discussing our matches, saying, hey, this felt really good in this match, or hey, you know what? I feel like I'm not doing well into this matchup. Like not just oh, this game felt bad, but like against this deck, I feel like I'm struggling, and talking about like, hey, what felt good, what felt bad, what variables would like what things we would change. Um, really kind of just airing out our thoughts to help us understand better what it is we're seeing, and just kind of building up on that with having not only your own viewpoint, but the viewpoint of the person that you played against, as well as your test group.
Yeah, agreed.
And what's next on testing a deck?
Don't get discouraged by the results of your test games. Uh,
I'm not
this
supposed to crash out.
this is so important. It is such a hard thing. Brian and I have a friend that we will play a test against that will always pull a god hand. He will always see the craziest hands in testing, and it's so hard to not get tilted by it because he's just that good in testing. But then he'll go to an actual event and it's always like, oh, I didn't see those hands anymore. And that's why it's so important to say, like, you need to not just test good hands, but we'll get to that. Um, but yeah, it's so easy to play into something, get really discouraged because you're saying like, man, this deck is just beating me. I can't do anything against it, and I'm starting to just get upset at it. And I'm like, I get it. I've been at this point currently because I was looking at taking GGO, and after playing with it, it's like it feels so good into so many things, but I feel like it doesn't do well enough into Gaius. So I'm saying like, wow, I am discouraged, but it's also taking that bit of like, hey, I'm actually looking at it saying, hey, I am getting discouraged. Let me look into it further. Let me actually figure out what it is that needs to change, right? So it's easy to get discouraged by your test games, by, your opponent just pulling out the nuts. You just keep bricking. It's super easy to get upset and get tilted and crash out about it or whatever you do. I tend to crash out. Um,
Well,
but
so something I was gonna say too in testing that doesn't get talked about, and I think that it needs to be because I know there's a lot of people that probably watch our videos that test with friends. So when you're playing with your buddies and people that you play with all the time, people have tells, people have ticks.
mm-hmm.
So if I'm playing against Kris, I know Kris plays a certain way. If I play against Devin, Devin plays a certain way, and they probably have the same thing with me. So it is one of those things where it's good to play in against a bunch of different people playing the same decks. So like I don't want to just play against Red Kenshin with Kris playing it. I want Devin to play it. I want Don to play it. I want Kyle to play it. I want a bunch of people to play it so that I get different opponent expression with it too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's super important because you absolutely will start to kind of play against that person differently because you know what to expect for them. Like, oh, I know, just for example, Brian tends to play a bit more aggressive. Devin tends to play a bit more conservative. Is that true? No. But the point here is if I notice
Yeah.
that and I keep trying to capitalize on that, I'm not getting actual proper testing here because now I'm starting to make choices against that player, not the deck.
You're testing for
Yeah.
me as a person, not for the current matchup you have.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another example is you might notice a guy at your locals always specials the first 4K that you throw up front, right? No matter what. Then you're going to throw up a bait card to bait out his first special and then use your more important raid or whatever, right? And so,
Exactly.
and that's not a good testing because you're just baiting the player and not how the deck would actually perform.
Or
I
you know your test partner's tech in their deck, so you know what to watch out for. That's maybe their spice for the event.
uh,
Right.
I
You
think
know
another
exactly what card I'm talking about.
yeah. I think that there's also an important thing to say that you should play into a deck, even though you know what it is you're playing against, you should play that first turn blind if you're going first. So you know you're playing against Red Kenshin. Oh, you have a bunch of zeros in hand, so you might just throw something up front early because you just expect that they're going to be aggressive, right? So it's you want to know how to play against a deck, but you don't want to change your play style not know because you're not going to know what your opponent's on until they actually play a card, right? So you don't want to make choices based entirely off of, oh, I'm doing really, really well against Red Kenshin because I'm playing in this manner, but you're not going to know that your opponent's on it until they actually start playing their cards. So you might make choices that are bad for you, but you're assuming that's another deck that you're playing against. That kind of idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yes, important, important, important. Don't get discouraged by things, especially with a game like UA, because things can just happen. It is a trigger game.
Yep.
Your opponent will just have the nuts. You will have the nuts. I think it's fair to say on the flip side, don't overstate, like, don't get too hyped up because your deck is doing really well in the moment. Like tonight, I was high rolling like crazy tonight as I was testing. Yeah, it feels great. You feel awesome. But you have to recognize I was high rolling. I was seeing exactly what I needed right when I needed it every single time. And my opponent wasn't. And so I need to keep that in check and say, okay, I know this deck is good, but I also need to understand that a lot of my win did come from them just bricking or me seeing exactly everything, right?
Yeah, exactly. Cool.
So
What do we got next?
when to
Oh,
mulligan.
this is a good one. This is a real good one.
So mulligan in UA is a unique one, right? Because you are not just shuffling your hand into your deck and drawing new, you are actually putting it on bottom and drawing the next 7 cards that would have been your life. And so that can change things greatly in terms of understanding what you could draw into here. Um, and it's very important to first identify what is a bad hand. What hands are just not worth keeping, and then also understanding when you do have those less than stellar hands, how to play through them, to not just give up, but actually know how to play through them.
Devin, what's your thoughts? Let's ask you this. If I'm
Sure.
if I have a hand that is a bad hand, like what would you say is a universal bad hand in Union Arena?
Well, an easy one is just you literally won't be able to play the game unless you top deck multiple cards, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, you could have a hand that at first, like, doesn't seem that bad, right? You have a 0 and a 1, but then everything else is 4 costs in your hand. That, and it's like, it seems so great because you have all your great 4 cost raids or 5 cost raids, and you're like, oh, and I have 0 and 1, so I can play my first couple actions. But that is bad. You don't want to risk that you're not going to see because you need a 2 cost and a 3 cost or anything less to actually get to the 4 cost. And so that's an example of one that is just not a good hand,
Oh yeah,
even though it's really enticing.
yeah. Where it's just so that also kind of leads into what a trap hand is. We'll touch on this a bit more, um, but
Yeah, I think like a mulligan too would be if I can't play the game, I
Yeah.
need a mulligan. You
yeah,
know, a good example, I have no zeros, I have no ones. I
yep,
have all 4 of my finals or all 4 of my specials in hand. Like variety can be very important in Union Arena. Like I don't
absolutely.
want 4 of the same card in my hand.
Unless it's like
Yeah,
4 of a really strong 1 or a 0 cost, and you're like, okay, yeah, I don't mind this because it's going to build me up into stuff. But even then, you don't always want to see 4 of a single 0. You want to see a variety to see more of your deck, whether you have multiple raid targets you need or whatever, right?
exactly. Yeah.
Um, And again, learning how to play through bad hands, it's a little bit harder in UA because it's not like if you just can't play your hand, you just can't play your hand. But we do have the tech of being able to AP draw. Super, super useful. Unironically, I've
Super
played other
good.
games and said, man, I really wish I had the ability to AP draw right now, but I can't.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so it's like we have ways to
Um,
get out of them for sure.
yeah, an example actually tonight where I actually could have played better through a mediocre hand is I had a hand that had a curve, but I kind of got into this stuck spot on turn like 3 or 4 where I wasn't sure what to do with my hand. And so what my instinct was is like, oh, I'm gonna play my 3 cost double energy Mito, and I'm gonna raid on top of it to get a draw because I don't really have much to do right now. And that turned out to be a massive mistake later in the game because that was my only double energy. And for the next like 3 or 4 turns, I was just stuck on single energy in the back. And now uh, Progressive is a 4 cost at highest deck, but you really, any of those aggressive decks, you want to have a double energy so you can have
Mm-hmm.
more efficient turns. And that was something that just really cost me. If I had held back on that, then I could have just had that double energy sitting in the back and being more efficient with the other cards in my hand. And I realized also, like a couple turns later, I could have just pushed up a 1 cost or something and still gotten to that double energy, and I would have done the same amount of damage. Yeah, I would have not gotten a draw there off the Mito raid, but I would have done the same amount of damage and I would have had more efficient energy in a later turn. So that's an example of like it was a mediocre hand, but I could have played it better.
Yeah. Um, trap hands. Brian, you are the one that knows this best. Do you go ahead and explain what you define as a trap hand?
So a trap hand is going to be, we've kind of touched on it. It's almost a perfect hand. I joke a lot about it. It's that greedy hand you keep that you're like, oh my gosh, if I just draw my a 2 cost, this hand is absolutely awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Or if I only draw insert random card your deck needs, if I only draw the Gaius or I only draw the Kauru or
Yeah.
whatever, that's a trap hand. And sometimes they pay off big, and that's your high roll hand, and you just rip your opponent to pieces. But a lot of the time, statistically speaking, they're hands you shouldn't be keeping. An example with Song, I have a 0 cost Asana, a 0 cost Yuna, a 2 cost Yuna, a 3 cost, um,
Silica.
I think a Silica, both raids, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe we'll say a special in hand or whatever. But I don't have any ubiquitouses. I don't have longing. I don't have anything that.
Oh, I think he cut out. Um, yeah. The idea is like you just don't have. Uh, you're missing something. And with song, to what Brian is explaining is it's exactly that. It's hey, this is in essence an amazing hand. If you had a ubiquitous, the hand would be the nuts. But if you don't have it, then now you're kind of struggling and floundering. Um, I've had a game specifically with Song where I didn't see a single ubiquitous decibel until very late game, and I did okay, but only because my opponent was also bricking, and it was just the most awkward game that I think I've ever played there. Um, with that, the next thing to think about is understanding your ratios, knowing the ratios you have in your deck, being able to look at those and say, hey, I know exactly the amount of zeros and ones and twos and so on I have in my deck, knowing what to expect from your draws, even your upcoming draws, knowing, hey, I've got, I have seen none of my specials. I should have one coming up soon. I haven't seen any in life. I haven't seen any from my current draws. Even in my searches, I haven't seen any. Theoretically, you should see one coming up. Understanding those ratios and like what to expect is super, super important.
Yeah. And another thing with ratios is it is actually super worth it to run the calculations on like what are the odds that this hand unbricks itself versus what are the odds that if I mulligan, I'll have a better hand, right? And that's something you don't have to do that yourself. You just punch it in. There's a bunch of deck calculators online you can find. I've seen them for Yu-Gi-Oh and for Magic and for other things. And so you can just put in and say, hey, I have a 0 cost, a 2 cost, 3 cost, 4 cost, 5 cost, right? I'm good on my curve if I find a 1 or a 0, a second 1 or 0, right?
Yeah, I mean that's
So
just kind of how it is.
There you go.
yeah.
If we can
And
get that.
so the all you need to look at is like going second, the odds are pretty high because you can AP draw and you get an extra draw on your first turn versus going first, then it's a lot riskier. And so you got to think about first, second, and knowing your ratios and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly. You did cut out a little bit there, Brian, at least on my side. Did you have anything else you wanted to touch on there?
Well, yeah, just the last thing in testing and going over decks are knowing if your deck wants to go first or second, and then knowing how to play your deck going first or second. A lot of things right now with like Gaius or any of the big 2 energy decks, you want to know, hey, how do I play going first? How do I play going second? What are my play lines? Because they are different play lines.
Yes.
GGO is a fantastic example of this because it's been one of the hardest things for me playing the deck. Is if I have to go first, yes, I can do it, but I have to see specific cards to make it feel okay. There's so many times I've played the deck and I'm just in the most awkward spot because I had to go first, and I have to just play over something in my energy line because I need the energy to do anything. And it hurts so bad. Whereas going second, the deck feels amazing. Anytime I'm stuck playing GGO and I have to go first, it feels like I'm pulling out nails.
Yeah, and that's a fair point, right? You need to see, hey, maybe if my deck is one that wants to go second but struggles going first and everyone in the meta is picking going second, then all of a sudden it's like, ooh, do I want to play this deck when if I lose the die roll, I basically lose the game? Like,
exactly.
That's a consideration too.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
To move on, the last thing we have is testing cadence. This is something that does matter quite a bit. It's the idea of how often you're testing, how much time you're able to give to testing, just kind of that rhythm that you're able to get into for your testing.
Yeah, and everybody's going to be different on this. Obviously, your work schedule, your family schedule are going to dictate how often you can play a game, and we understand that.
Mm-hmm.
But having something that is kind of set up like, hey, every Sunday I'm going to test with the boys for like an hour or whatever it is. It can make a big difference in how well your testing goes if you have time that's dedicated and that's what you're doing with it.
Exactly.
Because you guys have been testing on Sundays without me. How's that been going? You want to explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so we've been getting together and testing for about, I'd say anywhere from like 3 to 4 hours, depending on the mood. It was a bit more consistent on how long we tested at the start, but as we kind of started zeroing in on what we were wanting to do and people were getting more comfortable, it became a lot easier to kind of say, hey, let's get some testing again against a specific deck and get that all figured out. And so it became a little bit less of like a, hey, we're going to dedicate this much time, to more of a, I want to get in some reps with this deck and see how it feels.
Yeah, and that's a key thing too, is we kind of honed in on what we thought were the top meta decks, and then we made sure we had proxy versions of the decks. And so anyone who's like, hey, I really want to test against Gaius right now, right? And it's like, hey, who has a proxy Gaius we can use? And then someone would just pass it over. And so like almost everyone in our group is comfortable with Gaius because we've been doing the testing, and we have, and also comfortable the other way of we know how to play into Gaius better now because we're all willing to play decks that we're not planning on taking to the event.
Exactly. And I think to touch on that a little bit more, I think it's actually super beneficial to know how your deck plays into any other specific deck, but then also knowing how that deck works from their perspective. a great example of this is you look at yellow Ava, the heroine's deck, and you say, okay, the Mari is super problematic because she turns any draw or active trigger into a get trigger if you want it. And so you understand, like, hey, that's a problem. But now, as a playing that deck, you also see just how much it's like that is useful and that card matters a lot. But it's really the Misato. If you don't have that Misato on board, you're struggling. So now you look at that and say, oh, I know that. Well, hey, I know you don't have that card on field. I can be a little bit mean. I can be a little bit aggressive. And you know how to exploit their weaknesses when they see them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, to move on from here, I do want to move on to how to pivot a deck last minute. This is something that we do not, at least I don't advise typically, but exactly what I'm doing right now. And I don't advise it simply because it can very much narrow the amount of decks you have available to play, and you might not have the experience on the deck you're looking to pivot to as much as you would like to go into an event.
I think
Yeah.
that you have a little bit of an advantage here.
Yes.
Like, just in the standpoint of you are able to. Sorry,
Yeah.
you played the deck that you're playing at a different event, so it's not completely brand new to you.
Exactly. So we'll go over that as we go through this. I'll actually use my own anecdotal experience here to talk about my thoughts as I've been pivoting. So one quick thing is this includes going to an event on a short notice. Anything that we're talking about in this slide absolutely entails that as well. So, for example, say you got into the LCQ coming up, and you got into it last week. So you're like, okay, I have the time off. I can make it work to go. I just need to prepare. Or say you were on the wait list and you just kind of like weren't really testing that much and like, oh shoot, I'm actually in. I need to focus in. This all kind of pertains to that as well. So the first thing you need to think about is what is your reason for pivoting on your deck? For why are you changing decks? This can be anything from your goal has changed, your deck outlook has shifted to some other reason or to some other thing, such as
Yeah,
you noticed an issue.
I can talk about this even.
Yeah.
Like, I'm spoiler alert for anybody that hasn't been listening to our videos a ton. I am not able to go to Bandai Card Fest. I have another obligation that I have to take care of. For those that don't know, I actually own our local game store, and we do a lot with Konami and Yu-Gi-Oh! And I've been asked to go out for the 300th YCS in Virginia. So I will be there with my family, and unfortunately have to miss Bandai Card Fest. And we've had some family issues going on, and because of this, my goals for the event had changed. Before we had some things pop up, my wife, asked me if I was going to be playing serious. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to play pretty serious. I'm going to try to day 2, try to, top the event if we can. And then things came up. Obviously, I've been helping the guys test for Bandai Card Fest. And I just haven't been able to put the time in that I needed to really feel comfortable for that event coming up. So my priority and my focus for the event changed from trying to win to, you know what, I'm going out here to have fun. I'm going to have a good experience. And so I've changed what deck I'm taking because I don't want to take a super competitive deck that I really like and not perform well with it. I'd rather take a deck that I find to be a lot of fun because I am changing my expectations.
Right. And that plays into what we were talking about before. What is your reason? Like, what is your expectation for the event? Winning, having fun, pet deck, that kind of thing. So, in this case, Brian has changed to say, hey, you know what? I don't have the time and the commitment available to try and do what my original goal was to top the event. So now it's have fun with it. And honestly, I mean, because you're taking a fun deck, so I don't blame you for it. So the next part being,
I am quite excited.
Yeah, the next part being like the outlook on the deck you were originally trying to take has shifted. So as we kind of talked about, I was looking to take green GGO from SAO. It is, I think it is the best green deck right now, and I think it's a really really fun deck to play. The new support for it really smoothed it out, and when it works, it's like a dream. For those who don't know, who haven't really looked into it, the big raid that we got from the new set is effectively a mini Spear of Gaius. And if you've already seen how strong that card is, you can kind of work out how strong it can be for another deck. There are some differences that make it exponentially weaker than Gaius, but the point is, it's a very strong deck, a very good contender for the LCQ and for the national tournament. But through our testing, through our discussion, through everything we've been doing, the more and more and more I play the deck, the more I notice that it struggles into specifically Gaius. I think the deck does okay into some of the other decks, being Kenshin and Heroine, and I'd even say something like Mina it does okay with, Saito it's okay. But the problem is that I expect Gaius to be a massive part of the format. The thought I then have is, well, as much as I want to take this deck, as much as I enjoy playing it and have been hyping it up in my own mind as well to be like, hey, it's so fun, it's strong, it's so much snipe, it does so much that I like, but it struggles against the deck that I expect to just be the overwhelming majority. So it becomes, hey, as much as I like this deck, I just don't think it's the right call. I need to shift and change and pivot over into something else that I think is going to be a better call. And that's where my first thought is, what is my goal? If my goal is to have fun, then I'll play a deck that I just enjoy playing. I might just take GGO instead, or like to still take it, or I might find another deck that I've been enjoying. In this case, I'll even say like Song has been one of the most fun decks that I think we've played. At least Brian and I would agree. It's just such a blast to play. I'm not sure if you feel exactly the same. I think you enjoy it, right, Devin?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
No, I enjoy it a lot.
yeah. It's just such a fun deck, especially coming from a Yu-Gi-Oh background like we do. It's an enjoyable deck to play, and it's strong. But I have to think, but what is my goal? If my goal is to go and do well, then something like Song maybe isn't the best deck. So something we need to talk about is what decks do you have available, and additionally, it does come down to like how much testing time do you have available for it, and that's perfect because so I'm very privileged between myself, between our testing group. We have every competitively viable deck. Even one of our friends, I think, actually has pretty much every deck built, maybe missing a couple cards. So I really had the pick of whatever I wanted to take. And so then in that case, it's okay. Well, I have everything, but also I have to think about how much time do I have available. I'm doing this pivot as of this week. So I'm literally saying, hey, like last weekend, I was struggling and I said, hey, I need to figure something out because this just isn't working. So I said, okay, well, Song is fun. Let me work with Song. It is just about there, but I don't have the testing time available to actually make it a real competitor for what I'd want to do. So that's where I say, okay, well, what other decks do I have available? What decks am I comfortable with? And that's where I say, okay, well, Kenshin, Red Kenshin. That's what I took to the last regional that I went to. It's proven to be a very strong deck. It does well into Gaius. It has just a solid matchup into so much of the meta that it's hard to not take it. If my goal for the event is to try and get into or win the LCQ or top in the LCQ to then allow myself to go into the national event, I need to have a deck that can do that. And that's where, for me, based off what I'm comfortable with, what I know, and what I have available, something like Red Kenshin is the right choice to take.
It makes sense. Like I said, we've definitely talked about this in your situation that
Yeah.
it makes sense for you to make the switch, and I think that you are not just, if we look at what we've said the whole video, you're not taking, crashing out, and jumping on something totally different. You're taking your experience from testing, dealing with your crash out, and going to a deck that
Boy, I
you
did
have
crash out.
You crashed out hard.
Oh man.
But you're going to a deck that you're still familiar with, so you're not starting completely fresh.
Yeah. Uh,
Yeah.
to touch on that crash out, basically what I was struggling with GGO is beyond just having a bad matchup into Gaius, is that I understand now more so as my own personal experience. I'm a player that likes to have a lower to the ground deck. GGO isn't super high. It's a 6 and 7 is your energy threshold that you need, but you also have tools to kind of circumvent that. But the problem is that I favor the consistency that going into an energy cost 4 deck or an energy cost 5 deck offers, that something like a ramp deck such as GGO or Gaius or Lancelot or whatever, that they struggle with getting the energy they need. It's much better. Like they're really good at it, but they are going to struggle. And I had a whole like 2 weeks where I was struggling to get past 5 energy to play the game. And that's basically what I crashed out about. Was like, I can't play the game. Like it's not that my opponent's beating me so much as my deck isn't operating. Um, and so yeah, it's like the crash outs are going to happen. You're going to have them sometimes. I mean, I guess not everybody has them. Um, but it's learning from those experiences and saying, okay, I recognize that there's a problem here, and rather than just be a little baby and cry about it like I could have done, I said, all right, I know this isn't going to work out. As much as I like this deck, let me switch over to something else that is a better fit and better suited for what I want to do. So, next, we do, I guess to touch back on it, do keep in mind that you do have testing time available that you need to keep in mind, just to reiterate that. But some things to keep in mind, and this is, I think this slide here, the information here, I think goes for not just UA. A lot of this information can be slotted in for any game, but I think this is something to keep in mind for anything you're doing. The most general this slide can be. So things to keep in mind are card games are absolutely meant to have fun. You can be competitive, and being competitive may be fun to you, but you should be having fun.
Yeah. You need to define what fun is to you
Yeah,
for sure.
right. Like,
Yeah.
I I find it fun to say play something like Blue Bleach with the Rukia Ichigo deck, where it's, hey, I'm doing all these cool little combos and I'm able to do a lot of things with a little bit of AP. Same thing happens with like Song, where you're able to just really manipulate your AP to do a lot of stuff and feel like you're able to make a big impact on the board by doing such a thing. So I enjoy decks like that, but I enjoy winning, and I enjoy competing, and I enjoy seeing what I can do in an event and trying to do my best and doing better the next event.
Yeah, and so that's a big thing. So you need to define what is fun to you. And this is something that you don't define at the event. This is something that you want to define in making a choice for a deck. So as you're getting ready to go to an event, what are you doing? Are you going because you're trying to hang out with the homies and you're wanting to go to Excalibur before they tear it down? Or are you going because you literally want to win the event, and if you don't win the event, then you're a terrible human being? Like, those are very different goals.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, and you can even have like a middle ground. Like actually one of the things that I find the most fun is like I like doing well, but I refuse to play a deck I don't enjoy playing,
Yes.
right? I'm not someone who will play the best deck even if I don't enjoy it. I have played a top tier decks many times when they are actually play styles I enjoy. So like this time I was trying a bunch of top tier decks and none of them were feeling well, and that's why I eventually decided on progressive. Was just it was feeling better, it fit my play style more, and it was feeling good in testing as well, and like
Yeah.
against good matchups. So it's just what do you enjoy, and I enjoy progressive way more than when I was testing some of the other decks I was trying.
Yeah. It's really important. I do think it's really
That's
important
good.
to play a deck that you actually enjoy. Um, it's very easy for the best top meta deck to just kind of be a bit boring to play. like it's good and you're winning, and so you feel good because you're winning. But then you're like, well, I'm not really engaging. Like I'm not having fun playing it, and it may just not work for you, and it works for others. Like in terms of being fun, but having a fun deck makes such a difference. Uh, so keep in mind, stuff happens. Bad luck happens. It is best in a card game to have good luck better than it is to be good. And sometimes you don't have that luck. You just have awful luck. Whether that's you have bad matchups, you have you're bricking and you just can't play, or your opponent just sees better than you, or their life is just absolutely insane. Bad luck happens. It's going to happen in a card game.
Yeah, or even outside of that. Sometimes you'll have things like your alarm didn't go off, so you didn't get to get breakfast. So you had to rush to the event hall, and maybe you got a ticket. Like, there are so many little things that can affect you outside of even getting to the table to play your round that you just have to let go.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. And to tie that kind of more so like the bad luck is getting countered. Counter spells are some of the most annoying things to deal with in Magic, and the same thing happens when it comes to a game like UA, where like, hey, I'm playing my deck, and man, I'm playing against that one deck that just hard counters me. Like I can win, it's there, it's possible, but the deck is just the win ratio is just not there. It's not in your favor. You're going to have those decks that just are the right thing to be playing against you, and you can't do anything about it.
No, I'm going to counterspell your commander.
Uh,
Yeah.
yes. I would absolutely counterspell Spear of Gaius right now.
Yep. And sometimes you just like got the wrong read too, right?
Oh yeah.
Like going into that, almost everyone thinks Gaius, Red Kenshin, a couple others are really good. But what if like all of a sudden top players that have been hiding their decks really well, all of a sudden, people learn that Green Bleach is actually secretly by far the best deck, and all the
Mm-hmm.
top pros are taking it, and it's a bad matchup for your deck, and you just face it 4 times on the rounds, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing can happen where it's just like not just bad matchups, but like you just had the wrong read on the meta, right?
Yeah.
And so
Well, that's
things can just
such a good
like,
point to bring up.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
because sometimes things aren't so obvious, right? Card games can be hard sometimes.
Well,
Yeah, and that's a great point. Card games are hard, and sometimes your read is wrong, especially if you're not doing testing. You're just, seeing what people are doing online. Like I know that, not everybody does that, but that's a very common practice is you just look up, hey, what are the best decks? Cool, perfect. Let's go ahead and do this. I mean, we made a tier list video basically for the same reason.
yeah, and we could be absolutely wrong. It could come up somehow Pizza's the best deck and it's all just been getting slept on and some pro cracked it, right? Like that stuff happens.
Exactly.
Pizza is the best deck. I am
Pizza
walking into
is
traffic.
no. No, you're going to have to play Pizza. It'll be good.
No, I'm not
It's
gonna
a
do
fun
it.
deck. It's good. Anyway, um important to keep in mind as well, there's always the next time. It's rare that you're in a situation where it's like this is the last time I have to ever do anything with this game and I'm just done with it after this. Like a great example would be, somebody for Yu-Gi-Oh where it's like, hey, you're just young enough that you're able to do the Dragon Duel stuff, and it's your last year. That's an example where it's like, yeah, you want to do well in that event because it's your last time doing this. But even in that case, you're like, hey, well, I still can play regular Yu-Gi-Oh. I just
Yeah, it's not like
can't
their
play.
last time they could play. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just I just can't play this age bracket anymore. It's so rare that you're just not able to ever play the game again. And generally you're gonna have that next time. You're gonna be able to get together and do stuff. And again, if you have fun just competing, even if you don't do well in this event, there's always the next event to get up and go and do and play.
So I was going to speak on this. One of my friends, his name is Joey. He was the runner-up at Worlds this year for Yu-Gi-Oh. So he ended up his team took second, and he didn't win Worlds. And we got dinner. We were talking about it, and it just kind of the comment is like, hey, there's always next year. It's Yu-Gi-Oh. Obviously, he is a phenomenal player. He's been very successful. He's doing a lot of things to change this year what he did last year, and don't want to get too much into what he's doing, but
Yeah.
you know he understands and he's keeping the mindset that hey, there's next year. Yeah, I'm going to improve. I'm going to get better. But go back next year as a better competitor, and that's something we all can take from any event we go to. That I'm going to practice. I'm going to test more, and the next event I go to, I'm a better competitor.
Exactly. So, is there anything else you guys want to touch on? Because we are at the end here. Is there anything else we feel like we should bring up and just kind of shout out or anything else like that?
I think I'm pretty good. We've gone on for a
Yeah.
while. We appreciate everybody's hung out with us this long. This has been a lot of kind of thought process and everything. So if you have hung out to this point, please like, comment, subscribe, send love. Tell us that we're
Yeah.
dumb and stupid in the
Yeah.
comments. We
Tell
love
us
to
we're
hear all of
dumb,
it.
or say you forgot this obvious thing you should do in testing, or
Yeah.
anything like that.
Yeah, actually, in
Yeah.
fact, what is your favorite thing to do to help test and prepare for an event that you're going to?
Yeah, I was just going to add because we would love to level up our testing. I think that we do a good job, but we are definitely not the best in the world. And I would love to see whatever tips or tricks that you guys do.
Absolutely. With that being said, thank you so much for coming along with us, guys. We are the UA Lab, and we'll see you in the next video.